Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, we're going to be doing a book review on Roman history, and it is The Gladiators, History's Most Deadly Sport by Fik Meijer, or Major, I don't know. I'm probably butchering that name. It's Dutch, so if you guys know, leave it in the comments below. But yeah, I apologize. Don't know how to pronounce that properly, probably. But anyways, and this is also a translation from the Dutch, and we'll get to that in a second. But overall, this was a pretty cool book. If you guys have watched Spartacus, this will tell you basically, the truth behind, Spartacus or Gladiator or any of those sort of sword and sandal movies or gladiators involved. But yeah, it's an easy read, but I will say the language is a little dry and stilted sometimes. Not noticeably so, but it's probably just because it's like a nonfiction work and it's a translation. Sometimes that does happen, but overall, it really was a pretty good translation. Alright, so let's start with just the few things that I didn't like about the book, which are all pretty minor, to be honest, which is a good thing. First of all, like I said, it's a little dry in some places, but I think that's partly just like it being a history translation, so I'm not going to care about that too much. Secondly, this book deals not only with just gladiatorial combat, but basically any sort of combat or entertainment that took place inside of an arena where gladiatorial contests would be held in ancient Rome. And while that's actually a good thing, I did like that. Sometimes it felt like all the other spectacles, I guess, and other aspects of the events would sort of take precedence over the gladiatorial combat. And so sometimes you could go through large segments of pages or chapters without gladiators being mentioned at all. So sometimes they kind of got left in the shadow, which I thought was kind of weird, considering it's called the Gladiators. But probably should have just been titles. I guess that's a lot more catchy than things that happen in the Colosseum or something. But anyway, so that's a small nitpicky thing too as well. And lastly, let's see, I had a third thing. What was the third thing? Oh yeah, there was a couple interesting chapters towards the back, but one just felt kind of strange. It's sort of like a history of the Colosseum after Roman times, which I guess I don't have a problem with. It just felt like a little out of place, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know. It was definitely interesting. It just seemed kind of weird reading about the Colosseum in like the late medieval period and the like early middle age or the early modern period and stuff like that. But anyways, that's another like little nitpicky thing. Overall, I really liked the book. It was definitely interesting. I learned a ton. There's so many things I learned about. First of all, I guess I didn't realize how extensive the bestiarii were in ancient Roman games. I mean, I knew there was like combat with animals or executions by animals, things of that nature, but apparently during almost every game, the whole morning would just be dedicated to hunting animals or fighting animals or having animals kill people, stuff like that. The whole animal species went extinct because of how extensive the capture of these animals were for the games, such as the Libyan elephant, which would be a small elephant breed that like lived in North Africa in classical times, for example. But yeah, the book is great. It deals with think about the whole question of how did Rome actually get, or any arena throughout the Roman Empire. I mean, there were hundreds of them. How did they actually get elephants and tigers and lion, or all these like exotic animals? Where did they actually get them, and how did they get them? And it like literally goes into detail about how they would literally hire like teams like out in the bush basically to go capture some animals, and they would pay them, and they had like their own like call it guilds, I guess you could call them. And he even went to how do you transport elephants back to Italy, like across the ocean, and all sorts of stuff like that. So he does go into a lot of detail. That was definitely really interesting. And like I said, he deals with the whole aspect of the games themselves, not just the gladiatorial combat. And this included like the whole like entertainment value of the executions, which were usually done in some sort of play, I guess you could say, to try and bring home some sort of moral point. Because all these bloodthirsty fans that are like watching people and animals kill each other, they definitely want to be taught a moral lesson in the middle of the day during lunchtime, you know. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. He even includes some facts and figures which I had never heard of before, and basically he was able to show or studies that have calculated, you know, approximately what percentage chance you had of dying in the arena if you were a gladiator going against another gladiator. And it's roughly about 10% because, you know, if 50% chance you win, or approximately, but they went through about as many instances where they had the yay or nay of basically being or killed at the end of the battle, and stuff like that, and like, you know, what the chance of like surviving wounds were and everything. And they approximated about, you had about a 10% chance of dying every time you went into the arena, which actually doesn't seem, I guess, as high as sometimes you might think it would be. At the end of the book, he even does a couple chapters on portrayals of gladiators in like the cinema or on TV, such as Gladiator, but with Russell Crowe, and Spartacus with Kirk Douglas. And he talks about how, you know, either overall they were pretty good, or, you know, he obviously critiques all the minor things, but he generally agrees that the Kirk Douglas Spartacus film was actually pretty fairly. What I think his words were, it's not grossly like a gross disturbance of like the facts or something like that. So I thought that was really interesting. And lastly, when he does deal with the gladiators, it's really cool. He goes down through like every single gladiatorial style that we know of. You know, he goes basically what we do know of, you know, what kind of weapons and armaments they had, and then what kind of gladiators each type of gladiator would fight, because some would obviously be at too much of a disadvantage based on like weapon styles and that sort of thing, that they actually were paired specifically with other gladiatorial forms of combat, which I thought was really cool. But anyways, overall, I really liked this book. It was very informative on gladiatorial combat and the whole spectacle of the arena as a whole. And if that interests you, because you're a crazy person that likes to read about people killing other people in combat in the arena, you should definitely pick this book up. But anyways, I'm going to give The Gladiators by Fik Meijer 4.5 out of 5 stars. And always remember, read victoriously.